Hi guys, hello, welcome to I think the very last video of 2025, which is kind of crazy, and I am kind of sad about it, to be honest, because I just feel like time goes by so freaking fast. But with that being said, there is a lot of like fun stuff happening in the new year, so I'm really excited to kind of get to 2026 as well. But before we do that, we need to kind of like wrap up our year of reading, and to do that we're going to be doing our 2025 book awards, aka the end of the year book tag. I did this same kind of concept last year where I took inspiration from a couple other creators and kind of turned the end of the year book tag into more of like a yearbook style awards kind of situation, and it was so much fun. I'm very excited to do it again. But before we get into the awards, I did want to go through my Fable Stats, specifically their version of like a Spotify Wrapped, and I have not looked at these yet. I've been waiting to film this video to kind of like go through them with you for the first time, so I'm very excited. Oh, that's pretty. Oh, from the Library of Jensen. So cute. Let's look back at this year's journey and the stories you explored. So this year you read 104 books, reaching 104% of your goal. Oops. Can you pause this? Is there able to pause? Calm down. My goal for the year was 100, which originally when I started 2025, I had said that I was not gonna set a yearly goal because I wanted to focus more so on just reading my physical TBR versus like just getting through a bunch of books, if that makes sense. But I did kind of miss having that goal to kind of reach. So I did end up actually setting one for 100, and I am reading a book currently. So I think by the end of the year, we'll actually have like 105, maybe 106 if I kind of get ambitious. But honestly, the last like week or so of December, like of the year, I start kind of like planning the year ahead. So I'm kind of like in that mode, and we have a lot of plans for the beginning of the year. So I'm kind of like more focused on that than I am reading at the moment. Is this actually all 104 of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no, that's 49 of them. That's like half, which is kind of cool to see. You exceeded your goal of 100 books. Okay, we just went over that. On average, you finished each book in 5 days. I will say this is probably a little off just because I am really bad at entering things into Fable. When I start a book, I typically end up adding it into like currently reading like a day or two after that, and then I finish it. And either I finish it and I right away go into Fable, or again, it'll be like a week later and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to, update it. So that's probably not super correct, to be honest. You're in the top 5% of romance readers on Fable. That's kind of crazy. Your most popular pick was One Dark Window, which is hilarious because I didn't really like that book that much. Like, I thought it was okay. It was a solid like 3-star read, but I was expecting so much more from that book because of like the hype and stuff. Your rarest read was Alien Scars by Ursa Dax. Only 28 other people on Fable listed that as a book that they read. That is crazy, and also why I talk about that series constantly, because it just needs to be out there more. If you've been with me at any point this year, you know I have been talking about Ursa Dax, specifically her 2 like alien romance series, a ton this year. I've been absolutely obsessed with those books, and yeah, I talk about them constantly because I just want everyone to read them. If you like spice, if you like alien romances, please read those series. And then my hottest take, I'm assuming, is my rating for The Long Way Home by Jessa Hastings. I gave it 3 stars, and the average is 4.5. Now let's close your story with 3 books that made this year special, which also I feel like these might not be super correct ratings either, because another thing that I'm really, really bad at is rating the books on Fable. I'm really bad at like following through with these kinds of things. Like, I read it and I'm like, ooh, that's good, and then I just mark it as read and move on with my life, which is actually one of my reading goals for next year. I don't know when I'm going to talk about my reading goals, but that is definitely a reading goal that I want to have kind of like going into next year, is to actually be better about rating books, like leaving little reviews, star rating them at the very least. All right, so anyway, these are my best books of the year. Servant of Earth, definitely one of the top ones. I don't know if I would say it was like a favorite, but I definitely really enjoyed it. Barbarian's Prize and Barbarian's Mate. Yeah, these are definitely not correct. Okay, I just realized that there's like stars at the bottom. So like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then unrated. So these are all my unrated ones. To my point, Enchantra was a highlight for the year, and I did not even rate that one on Fable. So we're just gonna move on. Oh, is it asking me what I want? It has like a select book button. So am I supposed to be like selecting a book? Because it's asking me. There is a question mark on it, not saying like this is your best book. I don't know what my best read was. Can I like move on without doing this? I don't think it's letting me. Okay, let's pick a book, I guess. Crap. That's gonna be like our very last award for this video, is like obviously the best book of the year. And I think honestly that's the only one, because I like already wrote down the categories and like the nominees and everything like that, because again, award style. I did all of that information a few days ago for all of the questions, but the last one, which is like the best book of the year, I still don't think I entered because I just didn't know. Now we have another question that I have to answer, and I don't want to give away the freaking awards. So we're gonna actually just stop that for now. And let's go into our 2005 stats just in general on the Fable app. And here's kind of a breakdown of all of the books that I read every month. I definitely started out the year way strong and then kind of like petered out. January, February, March, and May, I read like a ton. And then in the middle there, I went through like a month-long reading slump. So that was kind of that. And then near the end of the year, I kind of like picked momentum back up. Here's my most read genres, obviously romance, because I'm within the top 5%. Again, that is so crazy to me. Which it's not like romance, just like contemporary romance. That is including fantasy romance, because the majority of the romances that I have read were kind of like those alien romances and fantasy romances. I think this has been like the slowest year for me personally for contemporary romances. I want to say I only read like a handful of them. And then with the rating, we kind of have to ignore because again, I don't really keep up with that. I'll do better next year, so it'll be more, you know, accurate. And then this one was hilarious to me. I was texting my friend the other day. We were kind of like sharing our like most read authors for the year. The vast difference between 1 and 2 and essentially all the rest of the authors for me this year, again, was just hilarious to me. So Ursa Dax is obviously in the lead. I read a total of 23 books from her this year. And then the one right underneath that is Ruby Dixon with 6. So it went from like 23 to 6. That jump is just so funny to me. And now that we have our stats out of the way, let's go ahead and do our awards. I am literally so excited. If you missed my video last year, basically we have awards that are gonna kind of showcase the good and the bad of my reading for 2025 via fun little kind of like yearbook style awards. For example, our very first one is Best Dressed, aka the prettiest cover. And this is gonna be the only award where I don't necessarily have to have read the book for it to qualify as a nominee. It's basically just books that I have purchased or received this year. And I do have 2 official nominees for this one, but I wanted to kind of give a couple of honorable mentions as well. I know these are not gonna win, but they're just also really pretty and I wanna show them to you. And our very first set of books is actually kind of a series or a duet in the first in another duet, but they're within the same universe. And the reason I wanted to mention these is not only are these super, super pretty, but I was also gifted these for Christmas by Bestie Z. I could not believe my eyes when I opened these up. This is a series that I mentioned kind of recently. Basically, I saw someone's reading vlog where they talked about one of the books and I was immediately like, I need to read those. And I think I've only mentioned it one time, but they're definitely on like the tippy top of like my must read ASAP kind of list. So I'm so excited that I got them. It blows my mind how sweet you guys are, and yeah, I'm just super, super thankful and super grateful. So anyway, without further ado, let's actually show you the books. So the first 2 are Riftborn and Duskbound by Greenwich and Lennox, I think is hopefully the author's names. These are basically a duet in and of themselves, but they're kind of like a prequel to this duet, which this is the first book in that duet. I don't think the second one is out yet. But this is The Ascended, and this is the book that I saw the reading vlog for, but they did mention that you should read these 2 books before this one. So I am so freaking excited for this series. And then another honorable mention that I have is Gravity Lost by L.M. Saugus. This is the second book in a series. I don't know how long the series is going to be, and I just absolutely love the cover art style for these books. Like, this is the kind of art style that I would hang on my walls. I love it. And then our last honorable mention is By the Horns by Ruby Dixon. I had the first book in this series as one of my nominees for this category last year. So that's why this one specifically is not a nominee this year, because I just feel like that's kind of repetitive, but I still wanted to mention it because these are so, so pretty. It also has really pretty sprayed edges, but then also the part that I like the most from these books is the actual hardcovers themselves. Each one of them is a different color. The first book is like a hot pink, and this one is obviously kind of like a tealy blue kind of color. But then there's also metallic stars on the entire front and back, which is just my favorite thing ever. I think these are so freaking cute. So those are our honorable mentions. Now let's get into our actual nominees. And the first one is the new UK editions of the Gold Rush Ranch series by Elsie Silver. I am absolutely obsessed with this set of books. They come in a really cute little box, but the art style is just so, so cute and so pretty on these. And I love the fact that these are kind of like color blocked, like each book is one kind of color, like different shades of one color, and I just think that's so fun. Here is the cover for the front runner, and then we have Off to the Races, which by the way, I am not showing these to you in the correct order. And then we have A False Start, And then last but not least, a photo finish. I'm literally so obsessed with these. They're so freaking pretty. These are definitely gonna get like a highlight special spot on my bookshelves. And then the second nominee for our best dress this year is the Grimm and Oro flip book by Alex Astor. There's no way in the world that this was not going to be a nominee. This is one of the coolest books I own. So this one also has like a little case, but it has little peekaboos so you can like see the characters' faces. So here's that again in its case. How freaking cool. And then there's Grimm kind of peeking through that. But also too, I'm just like obsessed with the fact that it's like a sun and a moon. I love like celestial things. Then also the hardcover itself is fully color illustrated. And I love the fact that this is kind of mushed together as well. So you have kind of like a transition between, you know, Grimm and then into Oro. Sprayed edges doing the same thing. We have kind of Oros at the top and then Grimm's at the bottom. But also too, again, this is a flip book. So that whole concept in and of itself is super, super cool. So those are our nominees. And honestly, I love them for like completely different reasons. And they are very much like opposite ends of the vibe spectrum. So it's very hard to pick between the two. I think it's gonna end up having to be a tie because I actually attempted to film this video a few days ago, but like the weather and just my absent-mindedness was working against me. That day I was gonna pick this series to win this category, but like today I'm kind of feeling this one a little bit more. So it literally changes day by day. So I just feel like these have to be a tie. Our next 2025 book award is gonna be The Underdog, AKA a book that I feel needs more hype. And I feel like our first nominee is gonna be, to no one's surprise, basically it is the Cowboy Colony Mail Order Bride series by Ursa Dax. I have been talking about this series literally nonstop all year long. I've been absolutely obsessed with it. Hopefully in the new year I find a new obsession, but yeah, 2025 was like the year of Ursa Dax for me. That being said, we do have a couple of other nominees, some other books that I've read that I just don't really hear anyone talk about, but I just loved them so, so much. So the next one is Servant of Earth. This one is one that I read kind of more recently, and yeah, I bought it basically purely off of one person's review. They were just raving about it so much that I was like, I need to read this book. And I'm so glad that I did because it was so good and kind of like different from your typical fantasy romance. And I am very excited to get my hands on the second book. That is another book that is definitely on the top of my to get next kind of list because I need to finish that story, or I need to at least continue it like ASAP. Our third nominee is Enchantra. I was absolutely obsessed with this book and the first book in the series, which was Phantasma. Enchantra was definitely like not even just an underdog for me, but like a highlight. Like I loved this book so much and I don't really hear anyone talk about it, which is a crime. I feel like a ton of people talked about Phantasma last year, myself being one of them, but for whatever reason Enchantra hasn't gotten the same traction and I don't understand why, because I honestly think I like this one a little bit more even than Phantasma. I'm like sad that this one didn't get as much hype as the first one because it's so, so good. And it had characters in it that I like. I'm really crossing my fingers hard that the author kind of expands upon more in other books. If it's not this series, maybe another one, I don't know, but like the family involved in this book, like I need more of them. And then my very last nominee for this one is That's Not My Name. And ironically, I cannot remember the author's name for this book, but it's a thriller book. And I listened to this one on audio and I definitely feel like that gave a lot to the reading experience, specifically with the male narrator because he did such a good job at making the character super creepy. But aside from that, like this book in particular just had me at the edge of my seat like the entire time. I'm definitely someone that when I read a thriller, I'm trying to like figure out what's going on myself like before it's revealed. But this is definitely one of those books that like had me guessing the entire time. And I was constantly kind of like second guessing what I was thinking because basically the whole concept is this girl gets found in the middle of the woods and she's like banged up and she has absolutely no idea who she is. She doesn't remember her name or anything. And basically while she's at the police station, a man comes in looking for his daughter. But then there's also another storyline where a girl has gone missing and everyone thinks the boyfriend murdered her. So the whole book you're kind of like trying to figure out, is this girl this guy's daughter or is it this missing girlfriend? And I did not guess the ending. There was an aspect of it that I guessed, but there was definitely a lot still that surprised me. So it was so good and I literally have not heard a single person talk about it. All of that being said, our winner for our underdog of the year obviously has to be the Cowboy Colony series. As much as I loved all of those other ones, again, I literally could not stop talking about this series all year long. On the flip side of the underdog, our next award is going to be The Teacher's Pet, which is basically a book that, in my personal opinion, has gotten maybe a little too much hype. And I do want to preface this by saying none of these books were bad. I did enjoy all of them decently enough. I think I rated most of them 3 stars. Like I feel like if I had read any of these outside of hearing hype, I probably would have rated them higher. But because I went into them with these like gigantic expectations, they just fell flat for me. The first nominee is actually, I'm just gonna do the first and the second book in this series because it was a duet, which is One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. Literally for like 2 years straight, I heard nothing but how fantastic and unique and just mind-blowing that this series is. And it just was okay. Like, I liked it, but I wasn't blown away at all, honestly. And I am throwing in the second book just because I heard so much hype on the first book, but then quickly following that, so many people were saying that the first book was super good, but like the second book is even better. They were the same to me. And again, on that same note, our next one is Clockwork Princess, which is the third book in the Infernal Devices, I believe it's called. I read the first 2 books in the series at the end of last year, and I kind of like started this year with finishing it. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it started off really good and I was really invested like in the first book, but as the series progressed, I just got less and less interested in the series as a whole. And I feel like a lot of people's favorite from this series is Clockwork Princess, and I just didn't care anymore by the time that book happened. It was still good, but again, I kind of rated it like 3 stars, I'm pretty sure. Like, it was just okay. And honestly, because of like my dwindling interest in the series, it's making me kind of nervous to start the other series that I have in that same kind of a universe, especially because I think as it progresses, it gets more modern. And one of the things that I did actually really love about Infernal Devices is the time frame that it was in. So the same kind of story, same kind of pacing, but in a more modern world just is not all that interesting to me. And then our very last nominee for this award is a book that got so much hype that I ended up filming an entire reading vlog for it before I ended up scratching the entire thing because it just was not as good as I was hoping. And that book is basically Alchemized. This one, I think I ended up rating like a 3.5 star, and I think I would bump it up honestly to maybe a 4 now that more time has passed. I did enjoy the rating process for this book. However, it was not the emotional roller coaster that I was expecting because of all of specifically the TikTok videos that I saw. Every single person ended up bawling their eyes out. So I went into this read expecting like an emotional roller coaster. I was expecting to have strong feelings, which I did. I did have strong feelings, but they were like feelings of anger. So for me, just in that sense, I was very disappointed, especially like right after I read it, because I also didn't really like the ending either. Yeah, I don't know. I just really wanted to cry. I feel like that's so weird to say, but like I went into that expecting and wanting to just be devastated, and I wasn't. So with all of that being said, our Teacher's Pet award winner has to go to One Dark Window / Two Twisted Crowns. This one was definitely, I think, the most disappointing out of all of them because especially with One Dark Window, I literally heard hype about that one for like 2 years straight. Solid 2 years of just like, this is the best book ever. And to me personally, it was not. So our next award is the Class Clown Award, aka a book that made me laugh. And honestly, this one was kind of hard because I don't really feel like I had a whole lot of books that made me laugh. Literally, there are only 2 nominees for this one, and I don't even know if they really made me laugh out loud, but they had kind of like funnier tones. Both very, very good books. Thoroughly enjoyed them, but I don't know if I actually like laughed out loud. Our first nominee is Dungeon Crawler Carl. This one is basically a post-apocalyptic alien-run game show in the style of a video game. Creativity of this series is mind-boggling to me. Like, the things that this author has come up with is insane. I just got the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th book for Christmas from my mom. It's the 29th of December as I'm filming this, and I am already 75% of the way through the 2nd book. Like, I have been burning through it. It's been so good. So highly recommend this series. And then our second and final nominee for the Class Clown Award is That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. I had a lot of fun with this book. The first book was good as well. This is the second in a series, by the way. The first book was really good as well. I read that one last year, I believe. And then this one I read earlier this year, and I liked this one definitely better than the first one. Again, I don't know if it like made me laugh out loud necessarily, but they're just really, really fun. So highly recommend both of these series. But I will say the winner for this award, the series I think I would gravitate more towards if I was to like have to like pick one right now to continue, would be the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. So that is gonna be our winner for the Class Clown. Our next award is the most likely to disappoint, which is very self-explanatory, but basically they're books that disappointed me this year. Not necessarily because of hype, but just from my own expectations going into it. Like, I was thinking it was going to be one of the best books ever, and it just wasn't. And the first nominee for this award is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. This one still makes me sad. I had such high hopes going into this book because I absolutely loved and was obsessed with the Kingdom of the Wicked series by the same author. And I did actually hear, kind of like before going into Stalking Jack the Ripper, that a lot of people had kind of polarizing opinions on those books. Basically, you're either someone that likes Kingdom of the Wicked or you're someone that likes Stalking Jack the Ripper. Like, I didn't hear a whole lot of people that liked both. So I kind of did go into it, maybe not expecting not to like it, but like, I was expecting it to be different. And I will say the beginning half of that book I did absolutely love. And I did actually technically read that first half last year. I think I started it in October and then just got like distracted by other things and put it down. And I did not pick it back up until I think October of this year. So there was definitely a big gap in between the reading processes. But basically the whole second half of the book that I read actually this year, I just could not get back into it. Felt really slow. The romance was just not hitting the way I wanted it to. And I did actually end up skimming like the last 50 or so pages. Like, I was invested enough in the overall kind of mystery that goes on in the story to like know who did it, but like I didn't really care to read any of the details. So I did kind of like skim through the ending. And then our second nominee hurts my heart to say, but it was Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. I feel like the pacing of it was kind of weird. Like, it was very kind of a whiplashy, like back and forth. Like, it would get into something, but then it would slow down, and then it would get into something, and then it would slow down. I don't know. It was a weird pacing for me. I also didn't really love the romance. And then also kind of like the main thing, I don't really like books, I'm realizing, about religion. Religion is a very, very heavy theme for this book, so it just was not my vibe. And then our third and final nominee is Soul Searching by Lila Sage. I went into this book with such high expectations, which honestly I don't think I really should have done, because I've read another book by Lila Sage and it wasn't my favorite either. I did actually do a reading vlog for this book, and if you saw that, it was one that I uploaded in October. If you saw that, you know, and now I know. I am not really a fan of Lila Sage's spice, because I had referenced another book from a different reading vlog kind of talking about the spice, and I do believe that was also a Lila Sage book. I didn't realize it in the moment, but looking back, I think that was also a Lila Sage book. And yeah, so her spice is just not my jam at all. But this book is actually not a nominee for this category because of that. It's more so because this one, I just went into it thinking it was gonna be this really fun small town romance with ghosts. And it does have ghosts in it. That is definitely a prominent storyline. But I just feel like the actual ghost interactions were very, very lacking for me. And then again, with like the romance outside of the spice even, I just kind of, it was kind of like meh to me. The whole book was just kind of a meh book. That being said, I think the winner for this category has to be, unfortunately, Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. This was one of my like most anticipated for the year, and it was so disappointing for me. Kind of on the flip side of most likely to disappoint, we have The Life of the Party, which is a book that surprised me. So this is one that I kind of went into not thinking much of, but it ended up being a really good read for me. And our first nominee is The Confidence of Wildflowers. The first book slash just the entire series as a whole. I think this is the first like official age gap that I've ever read, and I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about it going into it. And I will say, the beginning of it, I was kind of like, this is a little skeevy. Because it's about a girl that like is still living at home. Like, she just graduated high school, and the dad that lives next door. So that was kind of like, to me at the beginning. But I don't know. There's something about it that I really ended up loving. There was still moments kind of like intermingled that was kind of like weird, because it is hard for me, especially as someone in my late 30s. I just can't see myself being attracted to and wanting to be in a romantic relationship with an 18-year-old. Like, that's very much a child. You know what I mean? It just, that kind of age gap is a little intense for me. But again, there was something about this book that I really, really liked. There was one specific like subplot that had me bawling my eyes out. So sad, and I was not expecting something like that to happen at all. Also too, by the way, I do feel like it helps a little bit with the series as you get into it, because I think the second book, there's some time in between, so it's not as weird. Because I feel like literally with the same age gap, but the younger person being in their mid-20s, I feel like it's such a big difference than freshly out of high school. Anyway, moving on. Our second nominee is Boys of Tommen series. So far, I've only read the first 4 books in the series. I do think I have 2 or 3 more that are out currently that I need to read. And yeah, I put off reading the series for the longest time. It's a series that I've known about, I think, pretty much the entire time I've had this channel, but up until this year when I finally read it, I had like even told myself I wasn't interested in ever reading it, because I heard that it was really sad. It had kind of like darker tones to it. And again, up until this year, I had no interest in reading anything that was going to make me cry. But for whatever reason this year, I've kind of been feeling that vibe. I kind of want to cry sometimes. I've definitely developed an appreciation for an emotional read, and my God, these are emotional. But with all of that being said, like the sad tones and the fact that like for like 2 years I was like, I am never reading those books, I loved them. I loved them so much. Another nominee that I have is Mary by Nat Cassidy. This is a horror book, and that in and of itself, kind of like going into it, I wasn't really expecting much because horror is definitely not a genre that I read very often at all. I typically only pick up 1 or 2 in October and that's it. But this book was so good. It actually scared me, because that's another thing. Reading things that are scary just like does not affect me the same as watching it. Like if I watched probably any of the horror books that I read, I'd probably be a lot more creeped out by them. But because I just read it and I can't see anything, they don't ever really bother me. But this book scared me. Like I was literally afraid to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night because of what was going on in this book. I appreciated it very much for that. And then we also have The Spell Shop. This one surprised me as well because it's not a genre that I typically read a whole lot of. This one is a like cozy fantasy, which I really liked a couple of years ago, but recently, specifically this year, I haven't really been interested in them just because they do typically have like a slower pace. But this one I ended up reading because it was one of our books in the book club. And I'm so glad that I did actually read it because it was so good. It surprised me quite a bit. I absolutely loved our main character. She was like aggressively antisocial and just like quirky, and I loved her. And if anything, weirdly, again, because I have not really been in the mood for cozy fantasies, I honestly feel like this could have done with more coziness. Like you got kind of like the start of it and then it got cozy, but then conflict started happening and I was kind of like wanting the conflicts to end so we can get back to the cozy bits, and that never really happened. So I was a little disappointed with that, but overall, really enjoyed this one. Another series that I started this year that I was really surprised by was Sparrow Falls. I actually got sent, I think, the 5th book in this series by the author, which very much appreciated, but I didn't want to like jump into the series on the 5th book. I do believe they're kind of like interconnected standalone, so I probably could have, but organizationally, I would prefer to like start from the beginning. So I read the first 2 books in that series earlier this year, and it was very different from any other kind of like contemporary romance that I've ever read, because essentially they are small town romances, but they also have like a thriller aspect kind of mixed into them, and I thought that was really cool and different. Like I've never read anything else like that before. And then our very last nominee for the Life of the Party Award is the Paper Princess series. I got the first book sent to me by one of you guys, and it took me a bit to kind of finally read it, but my God, did this grip me. I flew through the first book, I think within a day or two, like 2 nights of reading. I think I finished it at exactly midnight. Could not go to sleep because I needed the second book ASAP, but unfortunately they were not available on Kindle Unlimited. My library didn't have them. I looked all over Pengo and all over Amazon and like other book websites trying to get like the best deal, and I think it took me like 2 weeks to finally get my hands on like the rest of the series, and I blew through all of those ones as well. It was such a good series. And with that, the winner of the Life of the Party Award definitely has to go to the Paper Princess series, just because, again, literally for 2 weeks straight, I thought of nothing else but finishing this series and how I was gonna get my hands on it, so it has to win. Our next award is kind of the opposite of one that we talked about earlier, which was The Class Clown. This one's kind of the opposite of that, which is The Ugliest Cry, aka a book that made me cry this year. Literally only 1 nominee for this. I went into it expecting to cry. All the rest of them were surprise cries. And our very first nominee, the one that I went into expecting to cry, was The Boys of Tommen, specifically Keeping 13. Bawling my eyes out, uncontrollably sobbing throughout this entire book. This series definitely does have like heavier topics, and the 13 books, the first 2 in the series, have kind of like abuse mixed in with them and like family issues, and it just uncontrollably sobbing the entire time. And then our second nominee was Between Two Kings by Lindsay Straub. This is the second book in a very spicy series. Like literally this series is probably the spiciest thing I've ever read, and it's insane. Like everything that happens in them are just absurd and crazy, and it's a ride for sure. And all of that being said, I definitely did not go into this book expecting to cry, but the ending jabbed me right in the heart. Definitely not a good one to end in the middle of the night, for sure. And then our last nominee for The Ugliest Cry was Project Hail Mary. This one also very much took me by surprise because, I mean, the storyline overall is basically about a guy that is like in space alone, and he doesn't remember why he's there, like the mission that he's on. And the tone of it, like from the very first page, is kind of more lighthearted and fun, which I definitely feel like is very much needed because of kind of that heavier tone of him being trapped in space by himself. But that being said, kind of going into it because of that tone, just again, right from the start, I was not expecting to get super emotional. And I don't believe that I got like super emotional, but I definitely got choked up a few times for sure. So all of that being said, our winner of the ugliest cry definitely has to go to Keeping 13. Again, I cried throughout that entire book, and it was very much the ugliest of cries because it was uncontrollable, literally bawling my eyes out. I feel like I've been filming for absolutely ever, but we are more than halfway through our awards. So the next one that we have is the cutest couple, aka the best book couple, which honestly is really hard for me to do. I just feel like with the amount of fantasy romances and contemporary romances that I read, they all kind of like mush together after a while. That being said, I do have a couple and they're both unconventional. First one is Carl and Princess Donut from Dungeon Crawler Carl. Our main character in that series is Carl, and Princess Donut is his ex-girlfriend's show cat, who ends up kind of like forcibly becoming his little sidekick because he gets kind of like trapped in this game with the cat. The development of that relationship is the best thing ever. And then the second nominee is a lot more vague. It's essentially all or any of the couples from either of the Ursa Dax series that I read this year. I love a good alien romance, and she does them very, very well. That being said, I do feel like, again, all of the aliens and the couples and things do kind of mush together after a while within those series. I have a couple of like standout aliens, but I couldn't tell you like right now which book they were from necessarily because I've read so many of them, literally 23, but I do really love all of them, especially like the Mail Order Bride ones. They're just like the cutest, most wholesome, like endearing alien partners. And with that, those are our two nominees. Again, very vague, very kind of unconventional, but that's the best I could do. The winner of our cutest couple award definitely has to go to Carl and Princess Donut. I mean, one half of that is the cat. So, and that is kind of the last award that has nominees. The rest of them are just going to be what they are, because it's more of like a pointed question versus open-ended, if that makes sense. So for example, the next award that we have is most ambitious, aka the longest book that I read this year. So there's no nominees because it's literally just the longest book that I read. That being said though, I did actually add honorable mentions, runners up if you will, and our kind of honorable mentions for the longest book. Third longest book that I read this year was Glow, which is I think the fourth book. Yes, the fourth book in the Plated Prisoner series. They're literally right behind me. That book has 705 pages. The second longest book that I read was Redeeming 6, which is one of the books in the Boys of Tommen series, and that one had 784. But with 1,040 pages, the longest book that I read this year was Alchemized. Definitely a chunky one. I knew right off the bat that that was going to be the winner, but it was fun to see kind of the runner-up books as well. And on the flip side of that, our next award is the biggest flirt, aka the shortest book that I read. And again, before we actually get into the official winner, the third runner-up, The Dragon Bride, with 190 pages. This one honestly could have been an honorable mention for Best Dressed as well. I absolutely love these covers. And then our second runner-up was Devour the Dark with 206 pages. So actually those need to be swapped. So in third place we have Devour the Dark, and then the second book is The Dragon Bride with 190. And then our overall winner, the smallest book that I read this year, was Love and Other Killers by Brynne Weaver with 61 pages, a whopping 61. That one was basically just like a little novella, and that one was literally teeny tiny. It took me an hour to read. And now our last award for 2025, we do still have one other award after that, but it's kind of like a prediction for 2026. But as far as 2025 goes, our very last award is Best All Around, which again, very clearly is the best book that I read this year. And this was very, very difficult. Literally, I have my nominees and I still have yet to put a winner. I have been going over these notes for the past like couple of weeks at least, and I don't know. I still, as of right now, literally don't know who's gonna win. Our very first nominee for Best All Around is The Boys of Tommen, specifically the 13 books. I really, really loved those ones. I liked the 6 books as well, but 13 I really like connected with more. Definitely got a lot more emotional with, yada, yada, yada. Everything I've already said about that series. So that is our first nominee. The second one is Enchantra. Again, I've said this in this video and I've said it before, but like characters specifically don't really stick with me very often, but a couple of the brothers in that family really stuck with me and I need more of them. Our next nominee is another book that I've mentioned a couple of different times, but the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. Next year is going to be a heavy Dungeon Crawler Carl year, and I'm very excited. And then a couple of like firsts in a series that I was really excited for, again kind of circling back to another one that I mentioned earlier, Servant of Earth. I absolutely loved this one. It's a very kind of like typical fantasy romance, but like different. It definitely has like darker tones, and I feel like what was really kind of cool about that one is the romance in it was a more realistic representation of a romance versus like the fantasy fairy tale-esque version. And I thought that was really cool. I wouldn't want that in like every book, but it was neat to have it the one time. And then a couple of books that I haven't been able to mention in this video yet. Metal Slinger is our third to last nominee. There was a few books in this same kind of time frame that I read this that were also popping off, like Silver Elite, something about sparrows. Quicksilver was having a moment as well around the same time, or at least I kind of read all those books around the same time, and I did enjoy every single one of those. I absolutely loved them. But there was something about this one that I just, especially in like the beginning half of it, really loved. And admittedly, it did get a little slow in the middle there, but the ending totally made up for it. I learned after the fact that the author that wrote Metal Slinger is also, or typically, a thriller writer, so the ending made so much more sense from that because it's such like an unexpected twist to happen in a fantasy romance. And that just, I had to like pick my jaw off the floor, and I am so excited, like literally so excited for the next book to come out. I need to know what happens next. And then a couple of other ones, Direbound, I just read recently, and that was so good. Direbound and Blood of Hercules are basically our last two nominees. I loved both of these books so much. I read them back to back. Immediate favorites for the entire year, specifically because, I mean, I loved the storylines for both of them, but what I loved the most was just how gritty the female leads are. Again, specifics about characters immediately leave my brain the second I start a new book, but those ones I feel like are gonna stick with me. And actually, my sister got me Bonds of Hercules, which is the follow-up to Blood of Hercules, for Christmas. And the second I am done with the Dungeon Crawler book that I'm currently reading, this is next on the list. And I also do feel very similarly about Direbound as well. Like, I cannot wait to read the next book. I don't think it's out yet, but I'm literally so excited for next year's reading because pretty much all of my favorite books from last year and this year, the next books in those series are coming out in 2026. So I feel like it's gonna be literally the best reading year yet, and I am so stoked. So anyway, all of that being said, those are my nominees. I don't know who's gonna be the winner. I don't know if it's just because I read these most recently, so they're the most fresh in my brain, but I feel like it's kind of between Direbound and Blood of Hercules. But like, favorite of the entire year is such like a big thing. Like, last year's winner was a very clear winner. This year, I'm not 100%. But this was like number one on my, like, the second Christmas is over, if I don't get this book, I'm running to the bookstore and getting it. So I feel like with that in mind, Blood of Hercules, I feel like has to be the winner. But also, that being said, Direbound, like the second book's not out, so it's not possible for me to do that. Because that was another one. I mean, I really wanted to read the next one as well. Why is this so hard? We're just gonna go with Blood of Hercules. I really loved Blood of Hercules. Now that that is settled, last but certainly not least, the last award that we have is Most Likely to Succeed. And this is essentially the book that I am most highly anticipating for 2026. And without a shadow of a doubt, I didn't even have to think about this for a second, the winner is gonna be All Hail Chaos by Sarah Reese Brennan. This is the second book after Long Live Evil, which was my best all-around winner for last year. So yeah, this is my most highly anticipated read for next year. I am so excited. I've been waiting this entire year for this book to come out, and I'm not even sure when it's gonna come out next year. Let's actually look at that. I think it's gonna be like mid 2026. Yeah, May 12th. So kind of in the middle of the year, which is unfortunate, but the fact that it's coming out at all next year is just gonna be the highlight of my year. I'm so freaking excited and I cannot wait for it. So that is definitely hands down. Again, didn't even have to think about it for a second. So with that, those are all of my 2025 book awards. Some of my favorites, some of my least favorites. Let me know in the comments some of your guys' answers for some of these awards. You don't have to do all of them or anything like that, but like maybe pick a couple of your favorites. Let me know. With that, that is everything that I have for this video. I hope you guys have had the most amazing of days. I hope you guys had a really good 2025, and here's to a really good 2026. Like I said in the beginning, I think this is going to be my very last video for 2025, which is crazy. So I will see you guys in the new year. Bye.